Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where I don't know what gods James Gunn prayed to over the weekend, but it worked. Because when it comes to round one of Marvel vs. DC, opening weekend box office, Superman wins! Oh my goodness, how long have DC movie fans waited to hear those words? As I said on Friday's live stream, when it looked like Fantastic Four might have Superman on the ropes, and this fight ain't over yet, I was saying that Gunverse and Snyderverse fans would be wise to stop with the infighting and unite against their common enemy, Kevin Feige. Last time Feige worked to undercut a DC movie like this, he did real and lasting damage. But this time, though, it looks like he might have a real fight on his hands with former BFF Gunn, who knows and helped develop a lot of Feige's tricks. The call is coming from someone who used to live inside of the house. Why do you think Zazzy wanted somebody from Marvel, the MCU, to run his DC? And when he couldn't lure Feige himself away, he went after Feige's number two, who had long been rumored to be Feige's likely successor until Gunn's social media scandal. As Colbert just said about Paramount, Disney made one mistake with Gunn. They left him alive. All right, so why did Fantastic Four come in under Superman and way under the Friday predictions? Remember when we were thinking it might be at 140? And that seemed reasonable based on how strong Thursday night was. The trades are I have other theories, but this I think is definitely a factor. The trades are blaming it on a lack of family appeal, which caused Fantastic Four to have a very big drop Friday to Saturday. It ended up being very front-loaded on Thursday night and Friday with like adult fans. It did very well with younger adults, better than Superman, but families are when is what helps Saturday to really shine. And you can see Fantastic Four had a much bigger Friday to Saturday drop. And also, the percentage of families in the audience is lower than what the average is for a PG-13 superhero movie. I love all these new numbers, though. This is fun. I told you kids aren't interested in watching the equivalent of their parents balance the family checkbook. And Fantastic Four took a lot of cues from The Incredibles. Deservedly, because The Incredibles is based on the Fantastic Four, and shrewdly, because The Incredibles is so successful. But they missed a really big component of those movies, and that's that they made Franklin just a baby. I mean, there is Jack, but there's the other two kids, and they didn't have that element in this film. But to Fantastic Four's credit, adults sure seem to love the family angle. And in their new movie, the Fantastic Four don't just value family, but family meals. And I'm sure you enjoy eating with loved ones too. But like the Fantastic Four, you're off on important adventures, which keep you busy. Well, the Fantastic Four are smart and flexible, and you can be too with Factor from our friends at HelloFresh. Factor meals are fresh, never frozen, which means you get all the benefits of a healthy home-cooked meal with none of the work. No grocery shopping, no preparation, no cooking. You just pop a Factor meal into the microwave, and in 2 minutes, you're sitting down to an amazing meal that meets all of your health goals and also tastes great. For instance, loaded mashed potatoes and shredded chicken. It's calorie smart, protein plus, and carb conscious, not to mention delicious. There are tons of meals to choose from each week as part of flexible plans that get delivered directly to your door. For me, with a super busy weekend like this one, where I'm not just covering Fantastic Four hitting theaters, but Comic-Con too, Factor meals are a real lifesaver. As I work on all my videos throughout the entire weekend, Factor meals are there for me, cheaper and healthier than takeout, plus I find I have more energy and I feel great about myself for eating well. And you can too, thanks to this amazing offer from our friends at Factor. Head to factor75.com or click the link right down below and use code 50BTT to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50BTT at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping with your first Factor box. And thanks to Factor for sponsoring this episode of Movie Math. Back to the box office, yes, the lack of family appeal is hurting this movie. But as I said, I think there are other factors. One, obviously, is opening 2 weeks after Superman. All right, so anyway, I do think that interest in superhero movies overall has waned with general audiences. Again, as I told you, I know some people who just said they had enough already and did not see Fantastic Four and do not plan to see it in theaters. I don't even know if they're going to catch it down the line. I know these people are just like superheroed out, basically. Because look, Superman and Fantastic Four opened pretty much the same, even their worldwide box office. They're $1 million apart worldwide. That's crazy. But these numbers are muted compared to previous superhero blockbusters, despite high praise from their respective fandoms with positive and, again, strikingly similar audience scores. So because of the strong way these movies are received with the fans, but they're only moderate box office, I'm seeing chatter, and I agree, that maybe we're seeing some sort of superhero box office ceiling emerge. Oh no, that would be bad. That would mean Hollywood would, yes, have to really bring these budgets down to be around $100 million instead of where they currently exist at around $200 million. It can be done. Remember, early Deadpool movies were made for cheap. All right, but with its boffo Thursday night box office, Fantastic Four should have opened closer to Disney's other summer flick, Lilo and Stitch, and maybe even approached Minecraft levels. But you know what? There have been times, including recently, that we thought live-action remakes and video game movies were on the outs. So comic book movies could always rally again to their previous heights. In fact, Kevin Feige is betting on it, that his Deadpool and Wolverine his Avengers Doomsday, I think Deadpool and Wolverine, more and more so, it's becoming clear, was really Ryan Reynolds' success. And it's funny because we keep saying that this is going to be Feige's, Multiverse of Madness was supposed to be his No Way Home. And it was not. I think so. You have other people kind of coming into his space and doing it a little better. And we'll see if Gunn as Superman ends up being one of those. Although, again, they're really just, they're the same, which is weird. All right. Although, I guess for those of us who read comics, Marvel and DC have often coexisted in such a way. But it's weird to see it happening in the movie space. But yes, Feige is hoping that Avengers Doomsday will be another Deadpool and Wolverine, which hopefully has more action. That's one thing the Russo brothers really understand, and that is the importance of having a plethora of action sequences sprinkled across your movie as kind of like, buoys, or platforms for resting for the audience to just bring them back in. I think, if you take some of for instance, their Avengers movies, the action sequences are, particularly in Endgame, are just absolutely phenomenal. And this isn't just a Marvel problem. I would say that James Gunn's Superman also doesn't have enough action. None of the comic book movies of the year so far, and I think we're done actually, have had enough action. What do you think? I know some of you are like, story's important, Grace. It is! Avengers Endgame was 3 hours because it had a lot of story and a lot of action. Action, action, action. People like superhero movies because they utilize VFX with the superpowers and such, so you gotta do that. What's everybody's favorite sequence in Fantastic Four? The cosmic chase. Now, if Fantastic Four had opened bigger than Superman, that would have been really bad for Gunn. So again, he really lucked out. Because it would have made it look like Captain America 4 and Thunderbolts were Disney Plus casualties and that Marvel overall still had its mojo. However, at least for now, Zazie can still feel good about snagging Gunn because DC Superman, it's official, has now opened bigger than every Marvel movie of the year. But it's not like Superman is unscathed in this fight. See, for its first 2 weekends, Superman was holding steady domestically with the Batman. But here comes weekend 3 with Fantastic Four and losing all its premium screens. The Batman actually, if you go back and look at the Batman week to week, it actually ended up having very little competition, which helped it significantly. But here we are. Superman has now begun to slip behind Batman. It's no longer pacing the same. And its overseas box office, well, it still ain't materializing. Good news is that it did break into the 500s. Bad news is that with Fantastic Four's arrival, Can it get out of the 500s? I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult for the movie at this point to add another 170, which would just allow it to match Man of Steel from 2013, forget surpassing it. But keep on praying, Gunn, because it'll help Superman significantly if Fantastic Four shares the same fate. Or maybe does even a little bit worse. Oh, come on, Gunn. All right, we'll see. As I said, Superman and Fantastic Four have pretty much identical worldwide debuts, which means Fantastic Four is also a little soft overseas. You see, Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 also opened at just 118 domestic, but went on to do 845 worldwide. But its worldwide debut was much bigger. China's sudden lack of interest in superhero fare is really hurting the genre at the box office. Although remember, Spider-Man No Way Home didn't even play in China, yet still got close to $2 billion. Speaking of other superhero movies, I think that both Superman and Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts could make the Batman Begins argument. That's surely the dance that I'd be doing if I were Gunn talking to Zazie or Feige talking to Iger, saying that these are, just like Batman Begins, these are smaller crowd pleasers who are getting their respective franchises back on track, making the fans happy, setting everything up for a huge follow-up. Feige better hope Avengers Doomsday is his Dark Knight level event. Will he finally have his own? It really all hinges, I think, on whether or not Robert Downey Jr. works as Doom, both from an acting perspective and how the MCU spins it writing-wise that he looks like Tony Stark. Did you see my Avengers Doomsday video that dropped last night? Check it out. Lots of fun theories and observations in there. And if you were subscribed, you would never miss a video if you hit that notification bell. I'm just saying. All right, so, and James Gunn, as for his follow-up movie, he's being very coy about what's next for him at DC. But I can tell you right now that overall, he doesn't have a Dark Knight. Supergirl and Clayface, as good as they might end up being, and they could be quite good, those aren't Dark Knights. And I think that the Batman Part 2, at least still for now, is not a Gunn movie. It's in the Reeves-verse. What do you think could be Gunn's Dark Knight, and how quickly does he have to get to it before his DC settles into being just a mid-range franchise? But gosh darn it, this is Fantastic Four's opening weekend, so let's put the spotlight back on them as we dig a little deeper into their numbers. So, ironically, because Latino and Hispanic audiences tend to come out for family fare as family moviegoers, Superman did better with families, but Fantastic Four actually did better with Latino and Hispanic audiences. That is very interesting. That's the first time we're kind of seeing a split, and not just associating a surge in Hispanic and Latino audiences with families showing up. But this is, who this is a great development for? Mr. Pedro Pascal. The Latino Hispanic audience, as we've discussed, is notoriously difficult for Hollywood to court. It's always just a really pleasant surprise. They're like, oh boy, they showed up for this movie. But if they try to get them, they don't show up. But here they did. So to find an actor who just might be able to do the trick is very exciting for Pascal and his agent, and also for Disney, who have invested in the actor big time, as he's now not just a central figure in the MCU, but he's the star of the next big Star Wars movie where it's been a minute that's set for next summer. And now that Doomsday has moved to the holiday movie season, Pascal won't be quite as overexposed next year. He's got Mandalorian and Grogu for Memorial Day, and then Doomsday coming out around Christmas. Although overexposure didn't seem to hurt him this summer. In fact, as I mentioned on the live stream on Friday, Pascal is proving to be an excellent example of an actor speaking out on important political and social issues, yet not falling for the rage bait online of those that are offended by his positions. There was a pretty big online smear campaign launched against Pascal over the last week or so. It really kicked into high gear as the movie was hitting theaters. But Pascal shrewdly ignored it, as did Disney. And as you can see, it looks like the smear campaign didn't really do any damage. Pascal is still hugely popular on social media, in fact, and he's just one example of talent being buoyed significantly by Saturday Night Live. Like Pascal, Bad Bunny, Nate Bargatze, and Ariana Grande have all gotten huge boosts from not just being on Saturday Night Live, but developing an ongoing relationship with the show. Going back to host multiple times, doing guest spots, not only on regular episodes, but Saturday Night Live had a big special, and Pascal and Bad Bunny, I don't know if Nate Bargatze was there, but he's doing other things with them. But they were a big part of that. And I think it's really helped all of these people, form a connection with audiences and on social media. Honestly, I think other talent should be paying attention to this and trying to do the same. Walton Goggins finally got to host SNL. Let's see how quickly they can have him back. I think he's a good, kind of in the same space, I think to some degree, as Pedro Pascal. Although, interestingly, speaking of demographics, despite Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm and such a strong focus on motherhood and Julia Garner's really well-realized Silver Surfer, women did not show up to this movie either, with the movie still leaning very heavily male at 69%. Remember, Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane couldn't get women into theaters either. Superman was 68% male. Again, these movies are so similar. And even Thunderbolts with Yelena Belova was still 65% male in the audience. What is it going to take to get women back into these movies? Well, I do think that Shirtless Hugh Jackman helped. That movie did a little better with women. And I also think, maybe hopefully when we get the X-Men back in here. I'm wondering though, and maybe Wonder Woman. James Gunn's working very hard to get Wonder Woman back, and she might be very desperately needed. All right, so how does the future box office look for Fantastic Four? Just like with Superman, overseas box office will be key for Fantastic Four. And if it can perform like Guardians of the Galaxy, even with China no longer a factor, that would still put it in the high 700s. However, there's a real chance that, as I said, general audiences are moving away from the superhero genre, and a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 might just not be possible anymore, or at least for the time being. So just as they were in a race for opening weekend, I think that Superman and Fantastic Four are now in a race for their global totals. Superman, of course, has a head start, and that could end up actually being we'll see if it's an issue for Fantastic Four. But we'll find out. And I'd say, and also don't forget that Disney has longer theatrical windows. So it's going to take a minute. This is not the sprint that opening weekend is, but more of a marathon. But we should have our answer in a matter of weeks. Well, months really, but we'll see. I'm sure those of you who are really rooting for your films are like, take all the time you need, Superman or Fantastic Four. Both movies' fate also depends on if the Naked Gun and Weapons can be surprise sleeper hits. There's also Disney's Freakier Friday about to hit theaters, but that's shrewd counter-programming, as again, women aren't interested in Superman or Fantastic Four, and families aren't interested in Fantastic Four, but have already seen Superman. In fact, there isn't going to be any really big movies at the multiplex until October. Ouch! 2 freaking months without a really big movie? My God, why? Why didn't you spread out these 3 July movies? This is so dumb. Okay, so we've got Tron Ares on October 10th, Black Phone 2 on October 17th, and Mortal Kombat 2, getting the premium screens, baby, on October 24th. Maybe also, I would say, The Smashing Machine might be something. People love those A24 movies on October 3rd. What's the next movie that you're really excited about to see in theaters? As for the rest of the top 10, that other big July release, Jurassic World Rebirth, is still holding on. Jurassic World Rebirth is like, don't look over here. Let me make my money in peace. Because, it just crossed 700 million. And while it might not get to $1 billion, get to $1 billion. One of you was like, you're never going to make a Billy work. And I was like, au contraire. I've seen some of you using it in the comments. So I still like the term. But speaking of Jurassic World Rebirth, it might not get to $1 billion, but it looks like it's probably going to get further than Superman or Fantastic Four will ever be able to get. Largely thanks to its strong overseas box office. Maybe we should put Pedro Pascal on a dinosaur. Think about it, Hollywood. All right, F1 is also still doing box office laps. Slow and steady wins the race in its 5th weekend, and it's doing extremely well overseas, where, of course, F1 racing is the most popular. And in fact, it's on par with Superman for the worldwide total because of that overseas box office. Last weekend's new releases, Smurfs, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Eddington have not been able to find audiences. The audiences are slipping through their fingers. So all three movies, in fact, are headed to digital real quick. Over on streaming, starting with Nielsen per usual, this time for the end of June, this is when Squid Game Season 3 dropped, right before the 4th of July. And you can see the still hugely impressive effect it has on the marketplace. I mean, wow, talk about a splash when this show drops. But look, Peacock also has a hit on their hands, another reality show after The Traitors with Love Island. In fact, Love Island is becoming so popular that it even got a shout out in the new Happy Gilmore movie, which is on a rival streaming service, Netflix. Then as for The Bear, it also dropped its fourth season that same week. But the horrible season 3, I know some of you liked it, but most of us didn't. That did real damage to the brand because season 4's premiere is down 26%. And The Bear is about to get hit hard in the awards space as well, as Apple TV's new comedy, The Studio, is going to take over that category. Then, sure enough, K-pop Demon Hunters is rising in its first full week on Nielsen, popping up on the overall chart, and is at the top of the movies chart. However, clearly K-pop is a global sensation, so we'll talk about it more when we get to Netflix's charts, because Nielsen just covers the United States. Over on the originals chart, the 3 episodes at a time strategy did indeed work once again for Disney+, this time with Ironheart. So Andor ended up doing very well with that strategy. And here's Ironheart with the first of its 2-week drops at number 6. Daredevil didn't chart once. I think it dropped with 2 episodes, but not 3. But you can bet that Daredevil season 2 will drop with 3 episodes. And that, we'll see if Disney continues to always do 3 episodes at a time. Remember, Andor was written to drop that way. I think maybe they should do it again what Prime Video does. Start with 3, but then move to once a week after, 1 episode a week after that. And will Stranger Things continue to chart week to week for months until Thanksgiving when season 5 drops? How many of you are working your way through all those episodes to get ready for the final season? I said I didn't know if I was going to do it, but so many of you are doing it, you're making me kind of want to do it. Maybe at least rewatch season 4. Over on Netflix's charts for just last week, and again, these are global charts, K-pop Demon Hunters is not slowing down. In fact, it has gone up. It has higher views this week than the week prior. That's amazing. And it's also continuing to dominate on the music charts as well. One of you just tweeted me that you finally watched K-pop Demon Hunters because I kept recommending it, and you loved it, which warms my heart. But you also had a great comparison that this was Sony Animation's Frozen. I love that. And we'll see if Sony and Netflix can capitalize on K-pop Demon Hunters to the same degree that Disney has capitalized on Frozen. And yes, Netflix did actually release K-pop Demon Hunters in a handful of theaters when it debuted, so that it does qualify for award season. Will award voters see it as the new Frozen or the new Barbie, where it gets those nominations but no wins? Frozen won Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song. So we'll see if K-pop maybe can do the same. What's its competition? Pixar is out of the race because of Elio not materializing. I would say Zootopia 2 maybe, and that did win Best Animated Feature. But lucky for K-pop, that's not only equally commercial, not some very artistic movie from, again, Pixar, but also it's a sequel. So that might help K-pop. But although K-pop, how long can Netflix get away with this? Because they're not really helping. I guess it depends how voters at the Academy feel about the divide between content. They hate when you call it content, but movies on streaming versus movie in theaters. What is the goal of the Academy and the Oscars? To celebrate the theatrical space or just to celebrate movies? We'll see. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. That's a real conundrum. I could see that hurting K-pop because where's everybody watching it? It ain't in theaters. Then with shows, Squid Game Season 3 has really slowed down. But I gotta say, it's amazing what Squid Game can do because it's now in striking distance of surpassing, even as it slowed down, Stranger Things 4 and Adolescence on the all-time chart. As for English language shows, Eric Bana and Sam Neill is in this as well, and Wilson Bethel from Daredevil had a solid debut with this show Untamed, while The Sandman ends with a whimper. Then on digital, Lilo and Stitch finally dropped after a very long theatrical release. The theater owners are thrilled about that, and it does seem to be helping their box office. What's the one movie of the year to get to $1 billion? Lilo and Stitch. But I'm also very happy to see Materialists right behind it, getting some love. That's a great movie, one of my top 10 movies of the year. Have you checked out that video? That's also up. And it's a good sign for The Naked Gun that the original trilogy is here in the top 10. Well, Happy Gilmore is here as well, thanks to the sequel just dropping on Netflix and trending #1 all day, Friday and Saturday, because Taylor Swift sure loved it. I gotta say, Travis Kelce didn't embarrass himself. He wasn't bad. Very small role. He didn't bite off more than he could chew. I watched it. Yes, I watched it. And I thought it was a cute movie. I recommend it as a lazy afternoon matinee. And I gotta tell you, I thought Maxi Golf had some good elements. As for this coming weekend, bad news for any superhero movie trying to get families into the theater, because here comes Bad Guys 2. We're also getting The Naked Gun, it's a quasi-remake sequel, as they try to bring back raunchy comedies. The first trailer was such a massive hit, yet interest seems to have waned since then. So I'm very curious to see how, in fact, both these movies do. I would think Naked Gun Naked Gun can't get any theaters. There's no premium theaters for Naked Gun, which I think would have helped that. Are you seeing either of these movies at the multiplex, or are you waiting for digital or streaming? On digital on Tuesday, we've got 28 Years Later and The Life of Chuck, while with streaming movies, Netflix superstar Sophia Carson has another rom-com. This time she's in England. With shows, Twisted Metal is back on Thursday, while Netflix has new show Leanne. While on Friday, Jason Momoa's new Apple TV series Chief of War debuts. You know, Momoa and Dwayne Johnson have been in a race of sorts, a very slow race. Hollywood moves slowly until it doesn't, to tell the history of Hawaii. And what do you know? It seems Momoa has gotten there first. But we'll see how big of a splash this show makes. If not a lot of people watch it or pay attention to it, there's still an opening for Johnson to tell Hawaii's story himself. All right, so that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your thoughts on Fantastic Four coming in under Superman? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.